Mine got canceled.
Oh, it did, the one that was going to be
It
at,
was gonna be on Tuesday.
yeah.
It got canceled until next year.
See the one that I got canceled. We were there.
in the presence of elected officials. Can you hear me better now? Okay, welcome. Sorry about that. So I want to just welcome everybody and say that we are blessed to be in this beautiful space tonight amongst elected officials, the beautiful Hartford community, and just a wonderful opportunity with the legal team that we have to support us. My name is Dr. Tara Harris, and I'm a mental health professional that supports those in the immigration process. And so I know wholeheartedly how difficult it is to go through the complexities of this system. So that's why we're here tonight. We're here tonight to learn. We're here tonight to just figure out what we're hearing on social media, if these are accurate pieces of information. And we have our legal representation tonight that's going to support us, and they're going to give us the opportunity to inform us, and they're going to teach us maybe some information we didn't know. We will also have a question and answer section, and if you'd like to go over to that table, you have questions that are personal to you, we will support you, we will answer your questions. And so our program tonight, we would like to offer in both components of English and Spanish. So with that said, I'd like to welcome up Attorney Dana Busen to support with our Spanish welcome.
Muchas gracias. Me llamo Dana Busin, soy abogada en inmigración. Estoy practicando leyes aquí en Hartford, en la ciudad de Hartford, y estoy dándole la bienvenida y también a los políticos quienes nos están acompañando. Bienvenidos. Estamos aquí con un grupo de abogados, doctores y mucha gente quien quiere apoyar su comunidad. Estamos aquí para los hispanoparlantes y en el programa ustedes pueden ver que más tarde, como a las 6:45, yo voy a presentar en inglés y en español sobre sus derechos en inmigración, y más de esto voy a presentar maneras proactivas de legalizarse aún antes de que venga la migra. Y mi compañera abogada Tania va a presentar sus derechos después de estar puestos en trámites de deportación. Y juntos les vamos a apoyar, y con cualquier pregunta más tarde vamos a tener una sesión de preguntas y respuestas, y a la orden en inglés y en español. Gracias.
Thank you, Attorney Busen. And if I could please direct everybody's attention to the monitor, we will begin our programming.
For Jamaica, when they stopped today, they had, I think, 56 persons on the flight for Jamaica. And even of that 5,120, many of these persons are not detained, and there's a whole process of to go to detention, to be detained, and then to be deported or repatriated. Many persons, and it's very important for us to realize that many persons who are going back home are really situations of overstay, these immigration offenses. And I give, for example, today, as is normal, whenever we get to maybe over 20 persons, the US will have a flight that repatriates persons back to their countries, and they go to about 3 countries in the Caribbean or 4. And for Jamaica, when they stopped today, they had, I think, 56 persons on the flight for Jamaica. Of that number, there were 4 persons who had served time for murder. Most of the others, it was immigration offenses. 3 persons were taken into custody for further investigation. So because of the screening process that happens when you go to Jamaica. So the sort of panic and labeling of Jamaicans who are going home, I want us to really not do that, because if you have committed an offense here in the US, by overstaying your visa or working, and the process has, has been put in place where you have committed an offense here and you're repatriated to Jamaica. Doesn't mean that you're coming out in Jamaica, and we label people deportees and stop them from being able to have a good life being back in their country and back in their homes. It is a problem. So I really want us to give thought as to how we are creating a sense of panic. And I want tonight, I hope the members of the media are here and feel very free to ask questions, because the statistics are not really in keeping with the panic that is going on. And we must make it very clear that every Jamaican is going to be welcomed home when for whatever reason they have to return. And a number of Jamaicans now that are here and have overstayed their visas, for example, are calling to say, how can I get back home without going through a system of detention and having issues with their reputation? And we're assisting them. Many persons who have gone through this route and at some point later want to appeal to come back to the US, we have also assisted with that. There are lawyers and there are processes to help people. So it is important that we don't get too caught up in the hype and get distracted from a system that is working and has been working for maybe the last 30 years. There's nothing new going on. The Trump-Vance administration, they did come in with a mandate to secure their border and to increase the enforcement of immigration procedures. And it's their right to do so, just like Jamaica will do so whenever we have persons who are not in Jamaica legally. So
thank you for your understanding while we have our technology. That was our wonderful message from Ambassador Audrey Marks, and we're grateful for that.
You're one of the first Americans, a Native American. You came from someplace else. Somebody brought you. The Irish, who left behind a land of famine. The Germans, who fled persecution. The Scandinavians, who arrived eager to pioneer out west. The Polish, the Russians, the Italians, the Chinese, the Japanese, the West Indians, the huddled masses who came through Ellis Island on one coast and Angel Island on the other. All those folks, before they were us, they were them. And when each new wave of immigrants arrived, they faced resistance from those who were already here. They faced hardship. They faced ridicule. But over time, as they went about their daily lives, as they earned a living, as they raised a family, as they built a community, as their kids went to school here, they did their part to build a nation. There were the Einsteins and the Carnegies, and there are also the millions of women and men whose names history may not remember, but whose actions help make us who we are, who built this country hand by hand, brick by brick. They all came here knowing that what makes somebody an American is not just blood or birth, but allegiance to our founding principles and the faith in the idea that anyone from anywhere can write the next great chapter of our story. And that's still true today.
That's right, Obama.
Can we just take a moment and say we miss you, President Obama? We miss you so much. And put together with Ambassador Marks, what a beautiful opportunity to start off our programming tonight. And it's with great pleasure I welcome up to the podium our Pastor Mitchell.
Good evening, everyone. Amen. Let me just welcome you to King's Chapel. We're just happy that we can host this forum tonight because we're a community church. These are hard times, and certainly we trust in God. Psalm 46 says, God is our refuge and strength, a present help in trouble. Can we just stand as we acknowledge our God tonight? Let's just bow our heads before him. Our Heavenly Father and our God, you're a kind God, a loving God. We acknowledge you for who you are, for your great love to all mankind. We were all created in your image and in your likeness. And so, Lord, as we come this evening, we pray, God, for guidance in these troubling times. We know that, God, except you build the house, they who labor, they will labor in vain. And certainly, Father, we ask for guidance and directions. We pray for our leaders, those who are here tonight, that God, you'd inspire their minds. You give us direction as to where to go. You said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And so, God, we know that in you we put our trust. So as we deliberate, as we discuss, as we spend time to navigate through these hard times, we ask for wisdom, we ask for understanding, but most of all, we ask for guidance. So breathe upon us, bless this forum this afternoon, and God, may your name be glorified. Thank you, Father, in Jesus' name. And we say amen. Amen.
Pastor Mitchell, in your words of hope, thank you so much. It is with great pleasure that I welcome Representative Bobby Gibson.
Good evening, everyone. I wish that you could stand where I'm standing right now and see how beautiful this room looks. It's filled with diversity. It's a rainbow of mixtures of people of all different nationalities, ages, genders, likes and dislikes. But we're coming together tonight as a community because we care about what's going on. We are deeply invested not only in the souls of our families, but the souls of our communities, our state, and this nation. Dr. Harris had it right, and everyone who clapped their hand had it right. Boy, do we miss Barack Obama. But I tell you what, it does not matter what's going on right now, because we are a resilient people. We are the people that built this nation. And we will not let it get taken away. We will not be ran away. We are here to stay because this is our home. With all that being said, you'll think that was a keynote speaker, but I'm not. I trust you. We have a panel of experts here who are going to blow you away. And it's my duty to bring greetings and welcome to you from my home church, Hopewell Baptist Church, and from the mighty, mighty, mighty state of Connecticut. Pastor Mitchell, thanks again for having us here to host this. A few short words. I first want to recognize some of my colleagues who are leaders who have come here to support. I would like to recognize State Rep Kate Farrar from West Hartford, State Representative Jimmy Sanchez from Hartford, Deputy Commissioner Suzette Demethan Brown, Windsor Mayor Nushette Black-Burke, and Hartford City Councilor Shirley Surgeon. If I've forgotten anyone, please raise your hand. For the elected officials, thanks for coming out and supporting. But before I sit down, let me tell you not just how, well, or why we're here. I think we know why we're here, and we're going to hear why we're here. But let me tell you, this is an example of the power of the people. This came up with an idea from a friend of mine, Mr. Andrew Lawrence. He's the president of Caribbean Trade Council. He came to me and said, Andrew, and Andrew, you guys may know him, a former sergeant of the police department, and past president of the West Indian Social Club. But he said, we should do something on immigration. And I said, we should. Because so many people, just like you, have asked questions about what's going on in this nation. So many people have so many unanswered questions. So many people are actually afraid of what's going to happen next. So this is what happens when the community comes together with local government and state government. We can come together and we can try to solve, and we can take care of each other, and we can come up with answers. So I welcome you tonight. Please ask questions at the table over here. It's going to be an outstanding evening, and worth your coming out tonight in this cold. So thank you again, and welcome.
Representative Bobby Gibson, we can always count on to get us amped and ready, which is perfect timing for our next speaker, and it is with distinguished honor I welcome our Lieutenant Governor, Susan Bysiewicz.
Wow, well, good evening. Thank you for that very warm welcome on a very cold evening. But here we are because Representative Bobby Gibson and Andrew Lawrence saw a need in the community and decided to address it. So let's give them a round of applause for doing that. And I want to say thank you to 3 outstanding lawyers, and you're going to meet them in a little bit. Dana Busen, Tanya Dorman, and Sydney Schulman. And they are going to share their knowledge and expertise. Thank you 3 so much. Now, I'll say this. Governor is just going to have to wait, sorry. Our state is a state of immigrants. And if you have ever seen that beautiful blue state flag, and you unfurl the flag, there's a motto in Latin that translates to this: he or she who is transplanted sustains. And that is a beautiful motto for Connecticut, because right now, 1 in 10 of us in this state came from somewhere else, right? And the only difference between each of us is just when we came from somewhere else. My grandparents came from Poland and Greece. Perhaps your family came 5 years ago, or maybe your family came 300 years ago. But we are all from immigrant backgrounds, unless we're indigenous. And we are proud of our immigrant backgrounds here in Connecticut. The Connecticut story is a story of immigrants, and as you heard President Obama say so eloquently, our country is a story of immigrants. And what is so disturbing is the vilification and the demonization and the blaming and the hate of immigrants that we see and that we hear coming from Washington. How quickly we have forgotten our country's history. So I'm here to say loudly and clearly that in Connecticut, we will continue to welcome people who come from somewhere else, because people who come from other places bring their talent, bring their culture, bring their ideas, bring their work ethic, and those things make our state so much stronger. They make our communities stronger, they make our state stronger, and our country stronger. So I've been very proud to work with my legislative colleagues, to work with community leaders and organizations like IRIS and advocacy groups and groups like the ACLU to make sure that we are doing what we can to protect the people of Connecticut. So one thing I think is really important to share is that regardless of your immigration status, you have rights. What are those rights? You have the right to remain silent and do not have to discuss your immigration or citizenship status with police, immigration agents, or other officials. And if an immigration agent asks to search you, you have the right to say no. If you're over 18, you should be carrying your papers with you. And if you're not a citizen and an immigration agent asks you for your papers, you should show them if you have them with you. If you don't have them, you can tell them that you want to remain silent and wait for your attorney. And the lawyers over here have a lot more to say about proactive things to do and other advice, but I do think it's really important for everyone to know what their rights are. Also, we want you to know this, that our Department of Public Safety, the state police, is committed to keeping the people of Connecticut safe, but this is in their policy manual. That agency shall not undertake immigration-related investigations and shall not routinely inquire about immigration status. We also suggest that local police follow the same protocol. They should not be asking citizenship-related questions. And I wanted to discuss citizenship because I think what people are most worried about is our youngest residents, our children. And I think what's really important for families of Connecticut to know is that your children, whether they go to kindergarten or whether they're in high school, your children are safe in Connecticut schools. Public schools are here to teach children not to inquire about immigration status. We want kids to keep going to school. We want parents to know their kids are safe at school. And you should know that our Commissioner of Education, Charlene Russell Tucker, has issued a guidance document to every public school in the state of Connecticut so that everyone knows that students have a right to attend public schools regardless of their immigration status, that Connecticut schools have no obligation to collect information about a student's immigration status or the status of their family members. And the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA, protects personally identifiable student information and information about that student's family members, their names, and their addresses. So families of Connecticut need to know that. And so we want, again, all of our families in the state to know your kids are safe at school, and schools are spending their time teaching our children, not inquiring about their status. So please, send your kids to school. They are safe. So. You have some incredible panelists to hear from, but I wanted to come to support Representative Gibson and our colleagues in the legislature that are doing everything they can to give families the resources they need to get through any kind of questions, to help them with any issues that they have. And I wanted to come because the governor and I will stand strong for Connecticut values. We will make sure that people have access to the health care that they need. We will make sure that our labor rights are respected and that people have the right to organize. And we will make sure that people who come from other places are treated with the dignity and the respect that they deserve. So thank you so much.
Our Lieutenant Governor says the work she does and does the work she says. Yes. An absolute honor to have you here tonight. Thank you. If I could just remind everyone to please silence their cell phones. I know with family and end of day, but it would be fantastic just so we could make sure everybody could hear. So thank you for that opportunity to silence your cell phones. So thank you again to our Lieutenant Governor, Susan Beisowitz. And at this time, I'd like to welcome up our Deputy Commissioner, Suzette DeBeetham Brown, for a few words.
Good evening. Good evening. I am going to read a letter on behalf of our Attorney General, William Tom.
Ooh, I love him.
Yes, we all love him. Thank you to State Representative Bobby Gibson for organizing tonight's event. It is the policy of the state of Connecticut to respect, honor, and protect immigrants and immigrant families. It is the policy of the state of Connecticut to respect, honor, and protect women, patients, doctors, and nurses, and reproductive rights of all people. It is the policy of the state of Connecticut to respect, honor, and protect working people and all the right to organize and form a union. It is the policy of the state of Connecticut to respect, honor, and protect all Connecticut families, including LGBTQ+ families. It is the policy and the law of the state of Connecticut to take care of each other. If the president and the federal government violates Connecticut's sovereignty, laws, and policy, Connecticut will stand its ground and fight back. Connecticut families and Connecticut's interests in full compliance with the law. That is what we have always done, and that is what we are going to continue to do. I look forward to seeing you in the future. Attorney William Tom. So I too would like to say thank you to State Representative Bobby Gibson for the work that he is putting in for the residents of the state of Connecticut. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for fighting. And thank you for educating us and making space for us. I was one of them before I became an us. And we came here for a better life. Because we thought that the United States was paved with gold and there was wonderful opportunities for our families. And when we came here, we worked hard to make sure that we were leaving the place better than how we found it. And for people to now say that we don't have a right to it, I'm glad that we're fighting. And I thank you for that. I encourage you to ask questions. If you don't want to ask them, please write it down over here so that it can be asked. But they say education is knowledge. It's only knowledge if we put it to work. So tonight I'm asking you to take all the information and put it to work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Commissioner. I have learned that some people are here today. We have Beverly Red for the West Indian Social Club President. Can we say hello to the wave? Good to see you and thank you for joining us. And a old friend, Maggie Gardner, the founder of Gardner House for breast cancer survivors. What you all might not know is that Ms. Gardner has done phenomenal work at Jamoki Academy with supporting an aeroponics program for many years. So thank you for that. And now I'd like to invite up Mayor Nushette Black-Burke.
Thank you and good evening to everyone. And first I'll begin by saying thank you to State Rep Bobby Gibson for what you have done and what you've organized, and for everyone that took part in doing this on tonight. I'll begin by sharing words from the Speaker of the House, Matt Ritter. Connecticut is a welcoming state. We have a legislature that has passed important laws like the Trust Act and healthcare reforms. We have a governor and an attorney general who believes in Connecticut values and the rule of law. America is a country of immigrants. Immigration is our national DNA. We are a deeper and a richer state and nation because of the people in our communities. And that's from Connecticut Speaker of the House, Matt Ritter. Round of applause, please. And before I take my seat, you've heard it, and the Deputy Commissioner, she started in that same place, that while I did not immigrate here, my father and my mother, they did. And if they had not, I would not be here. And I find it so interesting that our nation seems to forget that, I believe it was World War II, when they had sent the white laborers and farmhands to the war, that they needed individuals to come here to the Connecticut Valley to toil and work on the farms. Well, my father came via that federal program, that farm work program, to the Connecticut Valley. And I'm sure that he had no idea that his family would continue to sustain, that I would be here standing in this seat. And so what am I saying is that we have to continue to fight for immigration, immigration laws and rights. And the Speaker of the House, he had it absolutely correct. Immigration is our national DNA. It's our national DNA. This country would not be standing if it were not for those who came to support and to continue the work. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here in support. The town of Windsor, I talk about it all the time, the farm work program. And for those who don't know, we still have folks that come year after year to the Connecticut Valley to work at Lyman Orchards and all the places that we like to visit. How do you think it gets done? By those who come here to support this economy, our state, and our nation. So thank you so much. I look forward to the dialogue and the conversation. We will fight, and I am sure that we will win. Thank you.
I don't know about you all, but I am very inspired. Wonderful, wonderful words, Mayor. Thank you so much for those words. So I'd like to also say and thank, we have the First Lady of the Rehoboth Church, Lady Ramsey, here. If you could give a wave. Welcome. So now we're going to transition our programming to why we're here tonight, right? To learn some information we might not know, ask some questions. So please, I welcome everyone again to join Albie Harris over in the corner. If you have any questions, we can write those out. And we would like to welcome the topic first of legal recovery for deported individuals, and that will be led by Attorney Sidney Schulman. Attorney Schulman, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, everybody. Have I got this on? Can everybody hear me? I'm extending to the back of the room. I want to apologize first because when I get done, I'm going to have to run to another room for a short while. But I will be back and be happy to answer any questions that anybody has when I come back. The second thing I think I have to tell you is that, number one, is the son of immigrants. I grew up to my teenage years right down the street at 354 Woodland Street. And I was a member of a little group called a gang. And I think the statute of limitations is passed, so I can tell you this. But we used to play in back of this building, which was the Eagle Dye Works. It was a cleaning place, and they had trucks. And we one day piled into the truck, and somebody said, "Oh, the keys are on." Well, what do you do? I don't know. So I saw some kind of lever, and I pulled the lever, and all of a sudden this truck started moving toward the back of the building. And we all jumped up and ran away, but I got just enough time to see the truck slam into the back of the building. So, but I think the time has passed when I could be held accountable for my actions. One of the things I want to tell you is it's going to be a real crisis if people are just picked off the streets and thrown out of the country. And we all know this. But what happens when you have pending court cases, family matters, workers' compensation matters, personal injury matters, or if you own property? Well, I'm here to tell you that your rights are not going to be taken away. I don't care what they do. If they, and you know, fortunately, not too long ago, I picked up the phone and some lady was calling me from Sierra Leone. And that's the kind of communications we have now. This would be a total disaster 30 years ago, 40 years ago. But now, a group of attorneys and I are getting together. We're going to ask the courts to extend and increase what we call the remote transmission of hearings and cases. So that if you are just grabbed and taken somewhere out of the country, as long as you can get to if you need an interpreter, you'll have to have an interpreter with you from the other, in your other country. But you will all be able to get in front of a computer and you will be able to attend court cases here in Connecticut. And I think we're going to be able to do this. Well, now in family cases, obviously there'll be some difficulty in terms of compliance with whatever orders the court issues. But depending on which side of the case you're on, you're either going to be arguing visitation, which is going to be very, very difficult, depending on which side both sides of the case. There's no easy answer to anything, but you will be able to protect your rights, whether you're a plaintiff or whether you're a defendant in family cases. In workers' compensation cases and personal injury, there's going to be another problem because traditionally the judges here and the insurance companies here want people to go to doctors here in order to get medical opinions because the courts have no jurisdiction over doctors that are outside the state of Connecticut. And this is even true. I have one client down in North Carolina, and they don't want to accept her doctor's opinion because he's in North Carolina. And how do lawyers get those reports from those doctors? How do they get them to say what is needed to be said in Connecticut to be relevant? But we will. I am here to tell you that most of the judges that I've talked to, both in the court and certainly the judges in workers' compensation, have said that if the lawyers will make sure that the doctors in the other countries understand what needs to be in the report to come to Connecticut, that they will accept it. So it remains to be seen whether that's actually going to be so, but that's what the lawyers who do that kind of work are going to be fighting for. Because if it can be accepted here, and then the opposition lawyers, the defense lawyers, are going to have to find doctors in those countries to examine people. That's their problem. That's not somebody, I'm not going to worry about that. But they will find doctors in those countries to examine people so that they can give what they call respondents' medical examination reports. So hopefully, and also we have a thing called depositions, where we sit in a room with a stenographer who takes and the person who's doing the deposition asks a lot of questions, And I have clients come into my office and sit down in front of the computer with me, because I prefer to be next to my client when this happens. So this can happen easily in other countries, very easily. And so we'll accept that the client won't be sitting with me, but I will be able to brief my client as to what happens in the deposition from remotely. Not the best way to do it, but we're going to have to do it. I'll be able to brief my client as to what's going to happen in this deposition. And then my client will be in whatever other country. I'll be in my office, and the person taking the deposition, which is like a stenographer, typing that you see in court. And also the fourth person will be the person asking for the deposition and asking the questions. And the thing to remember is that when you take a deposition, I always have a right to ask questions also. It's not just one person talking to my client. It's just like you're in court, where you have a lawyer speaking, calling a witness, and then the other lawyer has a right to ask questions, and you go back and forth. So this will be the case not only with me, but with every other lawyer that you may go to. Now, the other thing is, I left there's some preparations. You know whether there's a possibility that they may grab you and send you off without, and my colleagues will talk about what can be done about that and how you should approach that. But I think that everybody who might have that happen should make some advanced arrangements. Now, one way you can do that is to do what's called a durable power of attorney, which gives somebody the rights to make decisions for you here about property, about businesses, and about some money and accounts. And I left about 50 forms for that in the back of the room. If there's not enough forms, you can contact me and I'll send you more forms. The advantage of a durable power of attorney is that it has individual items listed that you can have somebody represent you on or not. So if you don't want somebody to represent you, say, on stocks and bonds, because I'm sure everybody's got stocks and bonds, what you can do is you cross it out and you put your initials next to it, and therefore whoever you're giving this to does not represent you about stocks and bonds. But there are other things down about bank accounts and buying and selling real estate and a whole bunch of other things. You can also add to it if you want them to represent you in family matters. So they can be your stand-ins, so to speak, in family matters. And so that's one precaution, but you got to be very, very careful. And by the way, you can cancel this any time you want. So if you're in another country and for some reason you want to cancel this power of attorney, you can do it. And there's a way to do it, and you can talk to a lawyer here, but basically you have to do it in writing and show your intention to cancel it. You can also do a will in other countries, so that if something happens to you, as long as it's valid in the country that you're doing it in, it will be valid in Connecticut. We have something called full faith and credit. So if it's valid where you're doing it, it will be valid here in Connecticut. And I just today told the lady that her will is valid even though it was done in that terrible state of Florida.
I knew I liked you.
I told her she could pay me a whole bunch of money to do it again, but she really shouldn't. Now, the other thing is, but you have to be very careful, because remember, even though you can cancel it, when you give somebody a power of attorney, they have a right to do everything in your place. So maybe you're sitting somewhere else and say, well, I wouldn't sell my business. And they go out and sell your business for $10. You know, understand, they've got that power. That's what it means. So you have to be super careful who you give this power of attorney to. And you can trust somebody, and fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, it doesn't matter, best friends. I have seen good cases where they've really protected people, and I've seen some terrible cases where they've done the opposite of what somebody would want to do. So but you got to be really careful. If you cancel it here, if you do a power of attorney that is valid in the country that you're at, I believe, depending on a couple of things, that Connecticut would recognize it also. But that's a lot harder thing for me to speculate on, and perhaps some of my colleagues can answer that. So take steps now. Let your loved ones, your spouses, your children know what you would like to do if something happens and you're no longer here and you're someplace else in the world. Let them know what your desires are, what your feelings are, and if necessary, talk to a lawyer about how to accomplish this in some kind of piece of paper so that it's written down. Don't depend on just telling somebody something. You know, what's the old saying, talk is cheap? You know, so you don't want to depend on just talk. And while I'd like to think that everybody is trustworthy and faithful and friendly and so forth, the fact of the matter is, out of sight, out of mind. And you have to think about whether somebody, I don't want to hear that, oh, well, we were madly, passionately in love, and now I'm in another country, and he or she has found somebody else. I don't want to hear that. What you do in writing. And if necessary, with a seal that we have, either my seal from the court, or power of a notary public seal. Let's see. So I've talked to you about court appearances. You can buy and sell real estate, because if you own a house and you want to sell that house and you're in another country, that could be done through a power of attorney, which is what I just talked to you about. There's mostly everything, including businesses. You can give somebody another piece of paper which describes how they are to run your business, if you have a business, or whether they have to sell it, or what other arrangements you want to make. You can also, I mentioned, I think, about a will. All right, so I think that covers most of whatever I wanted to cover. If you have bank accounts, the same things. You can go to your bank and say, if something happens to me and I'm not here, this is my beneficiary. You have an opportunity to name a beneficiary for that account. And you also have an opportunity to present to the bank what you want to do, again, through a power of attorney. And the same is true. Now, you have to be careful with retirement funds, because you don't have control over those retirement funds. So, yeah. So, if you have further questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But at this point, I would turn the mic over to...
Thank you so much, Attorney Schulman. Yes, real world information. Thank you. And so next we have a different spin on the legal immigration system, and Attorney Busen is going to speak to us about proactive legal steps and do in both English and Spanish for us tonight.
Okay, so I have to talk doubly as fast because I got to do it in English and then in Spanish. Voy a hablar en inglés y después en español. Entonces, I have a lot to tell you, because my goal here is to help you first, and then people you know who might be targeted by immigration second. So take whatever I have to say to people who need it. By the way, in the back of the room, I brought flyers called Proactive Planning for Immigrants and Their Families in Connecticut. I brought flyers in English and in Spanish. They're in the back of the room. And it has everything I'm about to talk to you about on those flyers. Hay papeles por allá en español y en inglés sobre la planificación proactiva para inmigrantes y sus familias en Connecticut. Okay, So there are about 13 proactive steps that people can take before ICE even comes to your door. We don't have to roll down and think that just because you're here in undocumented status, you're going to be taken off the streets and deported. There's still things that you may be able to do. Who can tell you what those are? Only a licensed immigration attorney. Why not anybody else? Because this is a very sophisticated type of law, very complicated, and only someone licensed and experienced in immigration law can do it. And I say that because there are a lot of unlicensed folks out there who, even well-meaning, attempt to help immigrants only to get them deported by filling out forms and not understanding the legal consequences of what they fill out. So please, especially in times like these, when all these unlicensed folks pop up, do not use them. Using an unlicensed individual, by the way, that's a Class D felony in Connecticut, okay? To the unlawful practice of law by helping immigrants to fill out forms and giving them legal advice is a Class D felony in Connecticut that subjects people to up to 5 years of prison and $5,000 in fines. And the people who are victims of these folks could have their cases investigated by the federal authorities when it is discovered that they all originate around that one unlicensed individual. Unlicensed individuals are not bound by the same ethical rules as attorneys. They don't have to tell the truth. We do, because we lose our license if we don't tell the truth to the tribunal, to the court, right? We are supposed to be truthful and ethical and only take the facts as they are and present them to a judge or to a federal agency. Unlicensed individuals may invent stories that can get you in trouble with immigration and can subject you to deportation later on. So very, very careful with that. I'm going to go through the 13 proactive legalization options that still exist under the law. But first, I want you to understand why there's so few. There should be more. For 30 years now, there has been no significant immigration reform in Congress. 30 years without immigration reform. In 30 years, your population grows, your economic opportunities boom, and you need more visas for this country. Congress has not produced more visas for immigrants or enacted any significant immigration reform for 30 years. That's why we've had crisis over crisis over crisis, because there are not sufficient legal paths. Even before Trump, there were no sufficient legal paths for people to come here. Hence why a lot of them chose, unfortunately, to come here illegally. Trump is only aggravating something that's already been badly done in the law. We've already had broken immigration laws, and Trump is taking advantage of them by enforcing them to the bone. And those immigration laws that are broken give the president the power to deport all these people. We do have, for the most part, his agenda could be supported by those broken immigration laws. Now, I said there hasn't been any immigration reform or any significant immigration laws for 30 years. 3 weeks ago, we just had the new immigration law passed by Congress, and it was to create more deportable classes of immigrants. It's called the Laken-Riley Act. And let me tell you about the Laken-Riley Act. It creates mandatory federal detention and deportation for folks who are merely accused, not even convicted, of theft, burglary, even shoplifting, and of course, violent crimes. So, if you're merely accused, but not even convicted, you could be picked up by ICE, and it is obligatory for them to put you in detention and then deport you. And that's obligatory. It's not even like maybe. It's mandatory detention. So, folks, it's not the time for immigrants to even be falsely accused. Do not be the wrong person in the wrong place these days. That's the lesson of this. To tackle the 6 classes, so I'm gonna go over the 6 classes of targeted folks under the new executive orders plus the Laken-Riley Act. So right now, the first class of people targeted, of course, are folks with criminal convictions. That's always been the case, ever. Like all presidents have always deported people with certain criminal convictions. Number 2 is the Laken-Riley Act, folks. People merely accused, not even necessarily convicted of shoplifting, larceny, theft, burglary, and resisting law enforcement and violent crimes. So those are the second category of targeted folks. Third category, people with deportation orders. People who already went through immigration court and got a deportation order. Fourth category, folks who arrived here less than 2 years ago and are here in unlawful status. So this is new. This is a new executive order. It only used to apply around borders. Now it applies inside the territory of the United States. Anybody who arrived here less than 2 years ago and without legal status is now targeted for expedited removal, meaning you don't get any due process any longer. We pick you up, we throw you in an airplane, and gone you are. 5. The 5th category is all the people who entered unlawfully or are otherwise in unlawful status but have been here longer than 2 years. This is a low priority, but they could be collateral damage in a bigger raid. The administration says that they're not yet targeting them specifically, but there have been reports of collateral victims. And these are the folks who have nothing wrong on their records, no criminal record, they just are here in unlawful status for longer than 2 years. And number 6, I am very sorry to report that even people with legal status, parole status, that they've gotten during the Biden era, people like Venezuelans, Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, as well as now, we just found out, even Ukrainians, because Ukrainians arrived on the Biden parole called United for Ukraine. This is why I put Ukrainian colors on myself today, because this morning I got hit with the news that U4U Ukrainians, people displaced by the war in Ukraine who arrived with Biden parole, are being now targeted. Their status is frozen. They are not able to now move to TPS, adjustment of status, or other statuses because, and I quote, fraud and security concerns about the program. So, I'm going to tell you what to do. Okay, number 1, anybody here who is not yet a citizen needs to aim to get to the higher immigration status immediately. If you're here on parole, get on TPS. If you're on TPS, get on a non-immigrant visa status of sorts, or on green cards, or on asylum. Green card is one of the highest statuses you could get. It finally gets you very, very good protections. The only status higher than green card is citizenship. So if you're here, get here. Slowly get to the higher status. If I'm talking to you guys and you feel like you're not yet a citizen, but you could be, apply for citizenship. But only after you talk to an immigration attorney, because even applications for U.S. citizenships these days, to the extent you had problems when you got your green card, talk to a lawyer. Because even applying for citizenship could be dangerous if you have issues. Okay. Number 2, what else can be done? I'm going to go through the 13 steps, proactive planning. All right. You are not without legal support to... If you're here in undocumented status, and I'm talking especially to the people who arrived through the border with unlawful entry, provisional waiver, I-601A, it's forgiveness for that unlawful entry if you have a U.S. citizen or permanent resident spouse or parent as to whom you can prove extreme hardship. 2, deferred actions for childhood arrivals, or DACA. Let's talk about DACA, folks. DACA is only available right now for renewals. It's no longer, it's been declared unlawful even during the Biden administration by some federal judge. And so only renewals are available. And we advise right now, in view of everything that's happening, we advise all DACAs to try to get to a different status, a superior status, like an H-1B visa. H-1B visa is the most typical work visa. Its season is upon us March 7, starting March 7 of this year. Every March, they conduct an H-1B lottery. All the DACAs who are hearing me, try to get on an H-1B because by definition, most DACAs have a bachelor's degree minimum. Most of them do. And so you might be able to convince your employer to sponsor you for an H-1B visa. What else? If you're on DACA, you're going to have the ability to get a travel permit for a very limited time. During the first Trump administration, they got rid of travel privileges for DACAs, and it got reinstituted during Biden. It's still available, but apply fast. Don't let time pass by. For this advanced parole or travel permit is good to cure the unlawful entry that one had when they entered. Medical deferred action for extreme medical cases. This was an option for parents of very sick or disabled children to beg tolerance and forgiveness in this country. Deferred action, meaning that we're not going to enforce immigration laws against them, and while they're here, we're going to give them a work permit. This is still available, but we believe that it might be eliminated. But for now, it's still available. You could still apply for it. Non-immigrant visas and non-immigrant visa waivers. This is a very interesting option that has developed during the Biden administration by a judge. Basically, it says this: if you're here in unlawful status, even for longer than a year, therefore subject to the 10-year re-entry bar, guess what? If you can convince your employer to, say, get you an H-1B visa, you could travel abroad and come back in with an H-1B visa with no 10-year bar, because that 10-year bar is now allowed for you to be spent on U.S. soil. That's huge.
Say it again.
So, people who are here unlawfully were so far afraid of getting out of the United States because there would be a 10-year bar imposed on them. There's a judge order from the Biden era, so about 3 years ago, there's a case precedent that says you could spend the 10-year bar on U.S. soil if you secure a legal entry through like a visa, like an H-1B visa. So you could spend that time, instead of spending it in your country, the 10 years, you could spend it on U.S. soil. That case precedent still applies. For now. It still applies, so it's still a possibility for some. 245I, this is for people who came a long time ago. Violence Against Women Act for abused spouses, children, and parents of U.S. citizens. So you don't have to stay in a marriage to a U.S. citizen just because of your green card. If they're abusive, you can leave and get a green card through VAWA. T&U visa for victims of crimes and human trafficking. Asylum, let's talk about asylum. A lot of people file for it and they don't know what it is, and this is where a lot of unlicensed individuals are sneaking in and destroying lives. Asylum is something you declare within the first year of when you stepped on U.S. soil. If you declare it too late, if you apply for it too late, you have to explain why. There's only a few exceptions to the 1-year filing deadline. And it's usually for people who are fearing returning to their home country due to persecution based on only 5 categories: race, religion, political opinion, membership in a social group, and ethnicity or nationality. Nothing else. Not gang violence, not civil war, generalized civil war. It's just these five grounds. But it is a viable solution, as well as its relatives, the Convention Against Torture and Withholding of Removal, which I'm sure you're going to talk about. Special immigrant juvenile status for minors who have been abused, abandoned, or neglected by one or both parents. My favorite. Folks, military parole in place still stands. What does this mean? This is for, say you're an undocumented family and you cross the border with you didn't have any children, you just crossed the border, and now you're married and you have U.S. citizen children born here. Those children, when they turn 17, they have the choice of joining the Connecticut National Guard, as well as any other branch of the armed forces, of the U.S. Armed Forces, anywhere they want. If they serve in the Army, they get military parole in place for their parents, which forgives their unlawful entry and tees them up for permanent resident when the child turns 21 and then can turn around and apply for them. We have sent many people into the military this way. It's a good win-win for this country. Talk about immigrant contributions to this country. So if you're hearing me and you have parents, undocumented parents, and they have U.S. citizen children who are at least 17, the National Guard is a great place to serve. Just like any city or state, the National Guard needs engineers, mechanics, accountants, lawyers. It's not only soldiers. They need people to serve the Connecticut National Guard. Those people get their tuition paid for. Yes, they train you. They pay your tuition, your college tuition. It's like, why wouldn't you? And it's not forever service. I believe the contract runs 6 years. I'm telling you, it's one of my favorite things to recommend to immigrants. Have your children serve their time in the Connecticut National Guard. Get yourself legalized. TPS. I listed a bunch of countries on the TPS list, but for our sake, I just want to tell you I have to eliminate Venezuela from it because they just took away TPS for Venezuela. And today, they said that even you Ukrainians who have the right to apply for TPS if they arrived before August 2023, even those Ukrainians are no longer allowed. Their applications are being frozen as they apply for TPS. It's just outrageous. It's outrageous. But there's more. TPS remains and stands for Afghanistan, Burma, Cameroon, El Salvador, Ethiopia, Haiti, for however long, Honduras, Lebanon, Nepal, Nicaragua, Somalia, South Sudan. You get the point. There's a lot of TPS still standing. Okay. Let's see. Employment-based, and I'm going to close with this. Folks, employers have a moral duty these days to consider whether their labor could be sponsored for an employment-based green card in occupations where there's scarcity of U.S. labor. There's a process called employment-based green cards if an employer sponsors you. What does the employer have to prove? Again, that there's no U.S. workers, even minimally qualified, ready, willing, and able to take that job. And how do we prove that? We do ads for the employer to recruit Americans. And if nobody shows up, or if unqualified Americans show up, then this is a case for a green card. And many people ask me, well, can people here in unlawful status apply for that green card? Yes. And here's how you could do it, a combination that only bookworms like me and her can think of. You can combine the employment-based sponsorship with the I-601A forgiveness of unlawful presence, and boom, you got yourself legalization of undocumented folks. The problem is that if undocumented folks don't come to us, we cannot assess them for these things, and they stay undocumented and fearful. And my message to you today is, please do come to us, to people like me and Tanya. Sit down with us and describe your life. It's in confidence. It's all confidential. Tell us everything about you. And we will give you a legal strategy for how to either legalize, or if there's really nothing to do, which I rarely tell people. I rarely find people that there's nothing to do about. Rarely. But if I find them like that, at least we give them a proactive plan on a reactive plan on how to react when ICE comes knocking. And those people are folks with a deportation order that cannot be reopened. Oh, let's talk about deportation orders. Or are you going to talk about that? She's going to talk about how to reopen deportation orders, because that's more reactive, I say. All right. So that's my time. Did I stay within the time? No? Did I go too long? Okay.
Well, we did start late. We did start late, so you did great.
Spanish? Spanish, please. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to be really...
Attorney Busen, there's some time carved out for Spanish programming at the end. Did you want to...
En el final voy a hablar en español, todos estos en español. En el final, dice la doctora.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Busen, and we will be having Spanish programming after we hear from Attorney Tanya Dorman, who will be doing kind of the other piece with reactive legal strategies.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. How do you follow all of that? I tell people all the time when I have to talk to folks about immigration law that it's very complicated. You hear bits and pieces of it, but you really have to think about it as a whole. Some things will apply, some things will not apply. I made this slide, and I hope that I could probably keep it running as a slideshow so I could cover as much information as I can for you folks to understand why we're here and what's available to us when we're in immigration trouble. I called it Immigration for the People because I'm that simple and I couldn't think of anything better to give it as title. Could you run it as a slideshow, please? No, stand. So I could see properly. The issue is this. Most of us here are immigrants. Well, the entire country, we're all descendants of immigrants. So we know that to come to this country, there are things we need to do and have. If we want to come here legally, we need to get visas and things like that to come, unless we're from Europe where we could come with ESTA, which is another form of visa, and we're allowed to enter the United States with proper documentation and permission to do so. I can share with you that if you look at the alphabet and their A, B, C through Z, you have just about a category of visa for every letter of the alphabet, believe me. You just have to have the right need and the right qualification for such visa. You hear about H1s and TP, H1, B1, B2 visas, D1, C1 crew visas, E visas, EB1s, EB2s. They're just alphabetical lettering for various categories of visas. But we know people come here and they overstay those visas. Visas are always given to people with a duration. So if you have a student visa, it's going to be for the duration of your studies or the duration of your status. There's just going to be a deadline when you could stay here and when you need to leave. Fair enough? Fair. All right. But then you have folks who will come over the border. They will come in the trunk of a car from Canada or back of a tractor trailer. They will come by boat somehow. The other day they found 2 bodies in the plane of people trying to come in the luggage compartment of an airplane. They died. People have been making sacrifices to come to this country for years and years, as far back as we could think, as far as we could know. And those experiences come with consequences, death. You have people coming at the border, they're dying, they're getting raped, they're getting robbed. They're just bad things, they get sick, they're terrible things. However, they still make the sacrifice to come because when they come to America, what are they looking to have? A better life, right? And sometimes when they do come, it's not a better life, but they think it's a better life and they're willing to sacrifice for that better life. Now, here is the deal. When they come and they overstay the visa, they did come with lawful entry permission. They came through the airport, which means they were inspected, which means if they were to marry a U.S. citizen or if they're still within status and they marry someone with a green card, they can apply and have the status changed legally. But all these things take time, okay? We have brothers and sisters here who will petition for their siblings in their foreign country to come here as immigrants legally. Well, it's a 20-year wait. This is why people come over the border, right? A U.S. citizen will marry someone who's living in a foreign country. They do everything right. They file all the necessary paperwork. And it takes 2 or 3 years for your husband or your wife to be living with you in America, not to mention your children. Everybody with me so far? Yeah. We know that's true? Yeah. You agree? Yeah. And if you're a green card holder and you're petitioning for your spouse or your children under 21, it even takes longer than 3 years. It could be 5, it could be 7, all because of our immigration backlogs. It just takes long. Right now, if a U.S. citizen parent were to petition for an adult child who's not married, they're going to wait for about 15 years for that child to come. By then, their children will have aged out, and it's just a prolonged history of family separation. This is the system that we say is broken because you're just constantly in a situation of family separation and longing. This is why a lot of people sacrifice to come over the border. Yes, people will come to look for work because everyone wants to work and have a better situation. There's unemployment and poverty in third world countries. But for the most part, most people come to be with families. Now, we now hear about immigration as if it's some kind of a new disease, and foreign nationals are invaders like space aliens that we're all scared of. But we forget that when we go to the Chinese restaurant, we get what? Chinese food from Chinese immigrants. You go to the West Indian community, can you imagine your oxtail is being cooked by someone from Sweden or Scandinavia? It will just not have enough pepper. So we need the diversity of people to coexist in the way we can do this holistically and benefit unilaterally as a country, as a people, as an economy, right? So here's where we talk about reactive. Honestly, I am telling everybody, stop listening to the social media. Do not be afraid of Donald Trump. We have attorney generals and other lawyers who are suing and suing and suing and pausing and pausing and pausing some of the madness that we hear about. And we will wait to see those decisions pan out. In the meantime, we have to live, right? We have to eat. We have to function. We have to work. We have to take care of our families, our children. So if ICE were to walk around in Hartford, I can tell you now, they will not make it from the beginning of Albany Avenue. I don't think they would make it to Irving Street before they have to go home from exhaustion. Because they're just going to have to stop everybody. And I can tell you, if they go over to Park Street, New Britain Avenue, Wethersfield, Silas Dean, New Britain itself, they're going to die because they're not going to be able to do it to everybody. They're going to have to figure out a way to choose their immigration battles. It's just not something I think they're going to win. There are too many of us. The whole country, there are just too many of us. And I don't know what he speaks about at night with his wife. Because she is one of us. All right? And our VP must be having immigration conversations with his wife, who's also one of us. So it is kind of crazy to think that some of what we're hearing and seeing people do is actually going to be feasible. However, we have to pay attention to the fact that we do have immigration laws. They have been in our books for centuries. Laws that tell us who could come in and who can't. If you're here, how you get to stay legally or when you have to leave. That's a given and we know. That is why if we overstay the visa, we know, oh my God, we're out of status and we need to do something. Or if we come across the border, we have to hide because we don't want them to find us. We know that. So our system created what's called proceedings for removing people from the country. Before 1997, it was called deportation proceedings, and everybody was like, oh, deportation, someone's getting deported, we're deported, and so on. Now we have removal proceedings. Someone's getting removed. But they've taken it a step further over the years when they make changes to the immigration law by creating expedited removal. Now this one, you don't even get to see a judge. With the deportation and the removal, we have a system in place where you could request to have a hearing before an immigration judge, and so you could put forth your case. If you're eligible for one of the 13 things Attorney Booston talked about, or some of the other things that I'll talk about further in the presentation, you could put that in front of the immigration judge as an application and put your evidence, and you may be able to come back out of deportation and win your deportation. We know many people in our community who have gone to immigration court and we've been back out. They're now citizens because they won their deportation and they're able to become citizens after. I've done many cases with people like that. So I know it can happen. I know it can happen. But just in case you don't really understand the dynamic of deportation or removal proceedings, it's litigation. It is not a walk in the park. It's not cheap. It takes time. It takes a lot of resources. And generally, most people cannot afford it and they give up and go. Because that system is intended for that. All right? Now, we have, one moment. Why is my slide not? Okay. No clicker? Oh, great. Thanks. All right. So I put here like the different types of things. If you're looking for green card, citizenship, things like that, you're going to be doing it through the USCIS. Everybody knows about USCIS. It used to be INS and they changed it. Then if you're being detained for deportation, you have to talk to the guys over at ICE. Immigration Customs Enforcement. Those are the cops for immigration, okay? Then if you're coming through the airport or by seaport or any of our port of entries, you're dealing with Custom and Border. Those are the people at the airport that never smiles. Okay. Then, if you're in deportation, deportation is a part of the United States Department of Justice. They have an office called the Executive Office of Immigration Review that deals with the immigration court system, which has the Board of Immigration Appeals for when you don't like your immigration decision and you want to take it to a higher body. You have the Board of Immigration Appeals, generally referred to as the BIA. And then there are other administrative appeals unit that will handle different types of appeals on matters that may have been denied. All right. So this is like our framework of where we get to play when we're dealing with immigration. All right. Now, ICE is now dispatched because they're the law enforcement to detain people. But I can share this with you. They're not just randomly going to be able to just walk around and pull people in. The fear-mongering needs to just be toned down. I think it's slowly dwindling anyway. But there are people that they have specific administrative warrants for, or they have legal warrants for. There are people who have deportation orders. They pick up new warrants in the state, in another state, law enforcement related stuff. Those are going to be a few people that will have that, and they're the ones the media like to blast because they think everyone is in that situation because they're an immigrant. People have their own business and their own problems. It is not yours. Don't insert yourself in other people's immigration situation that you don't know anything about. Think about what your situation is and work within the realm of that situation. Does that make sense? All right. Following. Great. Now, let's say you're picked up by ICE. The first thing that has to happen, you have to go into booking like the police department. Immigration is civil, not criminal. So even though you have the right to remain silent and all of that, you're going to have to talk, say something at some point, because they're going to need to process you for removal proceeding. Your fingerprints will be taken. You're going to have a mug shot. You're going to be given an A number, which is what they give to you when you're an immigrant in proceeding. And that A number, if you happen to get a green card, will be your green card number, by the way. It stays with you, like your social security number. All right, so if you are now put in removal proceedings, the first thing you want to know is, how do I get out of custody? Because they could put you in jail, just like regular criminal court, or they can release you like they do in regular criminal court on your own recognizance, which is you promise to come to court when you're supposed to. They give you a paper, you go home, and then you show up to court when you get notice of your hearing. Make sense? Or they give you an immigration bond. All of that could be done at the ICE officer level, kind of like the police department. If they decide we're not letting you out for one reason or another, you could request a bond redetermination in front of an immigration judge. They will have a bond hearing and a decision will be made. Bond, no bond. You really don't have appeal rights for no bond. You just don't have that. Judge says no bond, no bond. You stay arrested. Now, if you're released on bond, you get put on a track that's different from when you're not released. So you may have a little bit more time to get evidence. You may have a little bit more time to litigate your matter and get more people to support you and put your applications in and wait for them to be decided on with USCIS. If you're, for example, if you're married and you get picked up and you didn't put your papers in, your spouse filed the petition for alien relative, you have to wait for that to be adjudicated before you could go into court and apply for your green card and have a hearing on that in front of an immigration judge. So the deportation process could take years. There's some people who were detained during COVID and their next hearing date is in 2027. So let them arrest everybody, because we'll be having a field day waiting for hearing dates into 2090, if we're alive. Right. So we now think about the priorities that they have, because Attorney Boosin talked about the levels of people that they're looking for. We already have people who came in at the border. They're not eligible for asylum or withholding or any relief from removal. They're going to go, but they were allowed in. Some were given work permits, some were not. Those guys eventually will quickly be removed because there's no basis for them to stay here and they're not eligible to remain here. They just don't have any way. Those easy. And we understand that many of those will get sent home. You just came over the Mexican border and you think you're going to be able to live and work, and you find out that that's not the case. You're going to get to go back home. But then you have the people who've been here for a long time and they have their green cards and they get into trouble with the police. And they have a criminal record. They have criminal arrest now, allegations. So random people could just say you stole something and next thing ICE is coming because you're accused. But that's another problem for another day. More litigation, more lawsuits. We have attorneys and attorney generals, so thank God. So the people who are generally on the chopping block are, as always, the non-immigrants, the visa overstays, the green card holders, the people crossing border, coming by boat, or the refugees and those folks. So we know who they are. So once you have your criminal record in any of this category, the way the immigration laws are now, you could just get deported, period. You could be put in removal proceedings, period. And they have what's called mandatory detention for people with certain criminal convictions, which means once you're finished with your sentence with the state or once you're on probation, they could just come and detain you and you're just detained until your case is over. And those detained docket cases with the immigration court, they try to speed them along. They really try to speed them along. So you don't get 90 days to present your case if you're locked up. You get a lot less, which makes it harder for you to defend yourself because you're locked up. If you don't have family members to get a lawyer to bring evidence to show different things that you may have that would make you eligible to not be deported, you're just not going to have it. And at the end of the day, you're just going to have to take the deportation order and go. Now, one of the most beautiful things they have when you're in deportation is something called voluntary departure, which means you can ask a judge to give you time to go buy your own airline ticket and leave on your own. Personally, I would be flying first class, thank you, on my little one-way ticket to Jamaica, because if I gotta go and I have to buy my own way and go nice, I'd rather go nice than go in shackles and handcuffs. Make sense? But then the rest of the stuff like asylum, withholding, adjustment of status, for those people who had the 2-year green card and didn't renew it and get put in proceedings, you could apply for what's called removal of conditions. There are just many different ways you could fight your way out of deportation. There are many people who are here with very old criminal convictions and they think they cannot renew their green cards or get status. Believe you me, I have seen people do that for years and years, and when I met them, I'm like, why did you wait so long? You could have been a citizen by now. Because they don't know, and they're going to people who haven't vetted their situation well enough to tell them strategies or develop ways to help them to get from under. Make sense? So they're good people who can help, but you have to make sure you're putting the right information to the right people and getting the right information back. All right? Now, we hear people talk about the revocation of U.S. citizenship. Nonsense. We know what we have to go through to become citizens. I can tell you right now, if Jesus came and tried to take my citizenship, we are going to have a situation. And that's Jesus. And I'm in the church. Okay? It just doesn't work like that. Denaturalization takes litigation in the United States U.S. District Court. It's litigation. And you can only lose your citizenship if you obtained it by fraud and misrepresentation. When it comes to immigration, they love to accuse people of fraud and misrepresentation. That is why you have to be very careful what you tell them, how you tell them things, what you write on paper, and what you swear to. Because it can be used against you down the road. All right? So there's a process that involves your constitutional rights, your legal rights to your citizenship, and if someone wants to take it, they have to be respectful of your rights for that. And if they want to take the rights of your children, that's a whole different stupidity, because I don't think it will ever work, because some of them will have to denaturalize or remove their own citizenship, including our president. Because he came from a long line of immigrants as well. Does that make sense? All right. Now, once you're in removal proceedings, and I can tell you this much because I've been doing this for a very long time in Hartford and Boston and all over the country. Most of the immigration judges I have met have been very respectful of people. They conduct a really good immigration court, and if you present your case really, really well and earn that application that you are filing for, most of them will grant it. Sometimes their hands may be tied depending on the laws and your facts and your situation, but I can tell you, I don't know of any one of the immigration judges that I have been before who are just gung-ho about just denying people who are having good cases that they're presenting before the court. All right? Do not be afraid to put your case to those who will decide it. Just make sure you earn it and you put your best evidence where it needs to be. Make sense? All right. Now, I can tell you, I have met many ICE agents. There's some who will remain nameless, who are not so nice, but for the most part, many of them are decent human beings. They are really respectful of people. They have a job to do like our cops have a job to do in the community. They're trained, they know people's rights, they know the laws. But if they don't fire all of those good trained people and hire some who have no clue, I don't know what's going to happen to us, but we will have to fight for another day. All right? Because that's what this is about. We have to fight. So the moral of the story is this. If you get put in proceedings, you can get relief from removal. If you are detained for removal, you have rights. Always request a hearing with an immigration judge. Always. And if ICE comes knocking at your door and they're uninvited guests, you don't have to let them in. That's your house and you pay your rent. And if you didn't invite anybody that you don't wish to see, you shouldn't have to see them. Does that make sense? I personally tell my clients, don't open the door for anybody that you're not First, if the knock sounds like it's too harsh, don't even turn the light on. Just go back to bed. Because it's not for you. And you know what? If it's that important, they could come another time.
That's right.
All right? That's my position on it.
Yeah.
All right?
That's ours too.
So I hope this is helpful. I don't have all the time in the world because I could stay here for days to talk about deportation, immigration, benefits, everything. It is really complicated and lengthy. And so if you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them at the end. And I hope I didn't go too long. No? Thank you.
Dorman. Thank you, Attorney Dorman. So we're going to make a slight adjustment to our schedule. And we have so many questions that have come in. And thank you to everyone's excitement with the questions. We have a big task for you, Attorney Busen, right now. Would it be possible in about 5 minutes to give as much information that you have presented to our audience today? That's a big ask, but could we have about, thank you so much.
Voy a hablar solamente sobre las maneras muy importantes de legalizarse. Aquí hay hispanoparlantes. ¿Hispanoparlantes? Sí, ok. Entonces, yo presenté sobre 13 maneras de legalizarse proactivamente antes de que la migra venga en su casa. Primero que todo, el perdón provisional. ¿Quién sabe sobre el perdón provisional? Esto es un perdón para su entrada ilegal si usted puede demostrar sufrimiento extremo a su esposo, esposa o padres ciudadanos o residentes. Acción diferida para los llegados en la infancia, DACA, los DACAs. La DACA no vale para la primera vez, solamente para renovar DACA. Entonces, aconsejamos a todos los DACAs de conseguir otro estatus legal, H1B, visa de trabajo. Para los de DACAs con permiso de viaje es muy importante conseguir un permiso de viaje, salir del país y reentrar legalmente con el permiso de viaje para perdonar su entrada ilegal. Para abrirse a un ajuste del estatus o legalizarse. Acción diferida médica para los con, por ejemplo, niños enfermos. Reentrar con visa de no inmigrante H1B aún después de la presencia ilegal. Esto sí se puede. La ley de equidad para las familias de inmigrantes legales para los quienes llegaron antes del año 2000. Violencia contra la mujer para los cónyuges, hijos y padres maltratados de ciudadanos estadounidenses y residentes. Visa U, víctima de crimen. Asilo, convención contra la tortura y suspensión de la deportación. Estatus especial de inmigrante juvenil para los menores quienes han sido abusados, abandonados o descuidados por uno o ambos de los padres. Familiares del personal militar. Si su hijo, ciudadano estadounidense, nacido acá, se registra en el ejército, ustedes como padres pueden obtener un perdón para la entrada ilegal y legalización siempre y cuando el hijo se tiene 21 años de edad. TPS todavía está disponible para El Salvador, Haití, Honduras, Nicaragua, pero no más para Venezuela, desfortunadamente. Cuba, a ver, no, TPS para Cuba, nunca había TPS para Cuba y ahora el parole para Cuba se eliminó. Se eliminó el parole para los cubanos, nicaragüenses, venezolanos y haitianos. 4 naciones han tenido sus parole eliminado, gente, hace una semana. Ahora la gente quien ingresaron legalmente con parole de Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua y Haití, no tienen estatus legal más. Es una pena muy grande. Hay que consultarse con un abogado licenciado para ver qué se puede hacer. Muchos de ellos pueden solicitar asilo, porque así mismo como vinieron, es posible que es la misma razón para declarar un asilo. Y residencia basada en el empleo también puede servirle. Hay que hablar con sus empleadores a ver si le puede apoyar una solicitud de residencia permanente. Aquí habían muchas otras cosas que ustedes tienen que saber. La vicegobernadora quería transmitirles a ustedes que las escuelas están seguras para sus niños. Nadie del estado de Connecticut está averiguando papeles. No están preguntando por papeles, entonces tranquilos con meter sus niños en la escuela. También aquí nos dice el abogado, nos ha contado que si ustedes pierden propiedades, negocios o quieren hacer testamentos desde afuera del país después de una deportación, todavía se puede, porque hay una manera de participar en la Corte de Connecticut desde afuera por medio del internet o de video. Muy interesante. El abogado también nos recomienda dar poderes a una persona de confianza alrededor de ustedes, pero cuidado con a quién da poderes, y mejor meter los poderes con el abogado para ejercitar los poderes siempre y cuando ustedes están en deportación o en detención, no antes, porque esta persona les puede estafar, les puede cometer fraude en contra de usted si tiene un poder para ejercitarlo aún antes de su deportación. Entonces cuidado, y a la orden, aquí estoy para más preguntas después del programa. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Attorney Busen. That was a tall order for a few minutes. We really appreciate that effort. I'd like to welcome back up and give a personal thanks to Representative Bobby Gibson for putting this all together for us tonight. We will have a question-answer portion after Representative Gibson speaks.
Good evening once again. I'll be very brief because it's a long night and it's cold. But I think we got what we needed out of tonight. Let's thank our specialists. Thank you so much. Attorney Shulman, Attorney Berkman, Attorney Buchan. And let's give a very, very, very special thank you to Pastor Mitchell and the uses of the church. And I have to give another special thank you to Dr. Harris. She's one of my colleagues at Jamoke Academy. I'm a principal there. And she thought it was appropriate and honorable to support us tonight. Dr. Harris, thank you so much. And a special shout out to her husband, Elby, for supporting us. And my CEC, Georgetta Zika, thank you for always being there. Thank you, everyone. I'm gonna let Dr. Harris close it out.
All right, we have a lot of great questions, okay? So this is a big ask. We have some amazing food in the back. We're asking for 5 minutes of your time to kind of go through some of these questions before we all run back and grab some food, okay? So we have a lot of recurring questions, but a lot of this information was answered loosely during the presentation, so please don't feel as if we skipped your question. So one of the questions is, I came across the border. Can I book a flight and return back home to Jamaica and come back in?
No.
Subject.
You want to answer? Okay, I'll take it from my Jamaican people. No, don't do it. Don't do it. I want to ask if the person actually got detained by ICE and was put in proceeding, meaning they processed you and gave you, the A number, and they tell you to call in and report in to let them know where you are, what you're doing, things like that. You're already in proceedings. Hang out. They let you in already. You're already here. See if you can find something to do to make some money. You're going to need it when you go back. You'll go back, but when they tell you to go, you could go. How about that? On top of that, request a hearing. It may take 5 years. And you get to stay here, okay? For all the time it takes for you to have your hearing. It's their system, let's use it. On top of that, after the 5 years, you may kindly ask the duly established immigration court system and the judge, the honorable judge, to please allow you maybe 120 days or so to pack your bags and go. And then book a ticket on a nice airline where they could serve you food and do your first class trip back home with all your stuff that you were able to acquire. Don't go. You're here already. You don't have to go at this point.
Message heard. With that said, I'd like to welcome back up Representative Gibson for another word.
I'm so sorry, but this wouldn't be possible without some of our sponsors. I want to thank Busy Radio. Thank you, Busy Radio. Energy Radio. The West Indian Social Club. The West Indian Foundation. And again, Mr. Andrew Lawrence, the president of the Caribbean Trade Council. And I also want to thank some of the other organizations who came out today. I don't know who all you are. I know the Blue Hills Civics Association is here, but thank you for coming out. Really appreciate it.
I know I remembered hot off the press, so Representative Gibson, if you want to give them a shout out as well.
Hot off the press.
Perfect. So how will an undocumented student who wants to go to college be impacted by all of this?
Oh, wow. So the heaviness of regulations against foreign students is yet to come. Nothing has been done in this field yet, but we know from prior experience with the first administration, here's what to expect. We're expecting that you better stay in full-time study status or else you're going to lose your F1 student visa. So make sure you don't drop before full credit, okay? Number two, it's going to be harder and harder to travel abroad and process through the consulates abroad. So try to reduce your international travel as a student and only travel internationally when you have a valid F1 student visa still unexpired in your passport. If you have to renew visas while you travel abroad, that's a juncture at which they could keep you out. Number three, we're expecting that OPT, the work permit that you get after F1 student visa, the OPT STEM one, the science, technology, engineering, and math, we think that it's going to be eliminated or drastically reduced. So this is bad news for STEM students, but we hope not. I mean, we always think that that's going to be the case, but we always hope for the best. What else? Duration of status stuff. So it's going to be, everything around the student visa is going to be much harsher. It's always been one of those heavily regulated visa because it was utilized by the 9/11 hijackers. And ever since, it's highly regulated, and any wrong step that you take is reported by your university directly to ICE, to the system, CVIS system, which goes into ICE. So international students need to be very careful about complying strictly with everything that's in the terms of their student visa. Do not work without authorization. Always cover yourself with work permits outside of campus. If you can, do not work without authorization because they can come and get you.
Thank you, attorneys. So better late than never, and Representative Gibson appreciates the better late than never and wanted to pay respect to Veronica Avery Wilson and Cynthia Jennings here. Yes. And so the question is it safe to travel as an undocumented individual domestically? So state to state, right? Right in here in the United States.
Okay, before May 2025, maybe. After May 2025, when Real ID kicks in, I would refrain from traveling domestically, especially if it's by flight. Because after May 2025, Real ID kicks in, you cannot board a flight unless you have a Real ID compliant piece of identification. Between now and then, careful because, for example, Connecticut driver's licenses, driver-only permits who are for undocumented immigrants are not recognized in Florida, people. In fact, you're going to be targeted, stopped, and who knows what done to you in Florida if they catch you with a drive-only permit that's not recognized in Florida. And remember, states outside of Connecticut are more cooperative with ICE than Connecticut. The police of the state of Tennessee, check this out, Tennessee, the state of Tennessee, not only is cooperating with ICE, but has created a special deportation bureau funded by Tennessee taxpayers that pays a guy $240,000 a year for 4 years of Trump administration to chase immigrants and make sure that they do more than ICE does in terms of rounding up undocumented immigrants. So if I were you, I would stick to a friendly place like Connecticut for now.
Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna go quick because we have amazing questions. If you've been given an ITIN number, the ITIN number, can you still use it? And what happens to your property acquired with an ITIN number?
So the ITIN is what's called a tax ID number. It's generally given to non-citizens or businesses and entities for taxation purposes. Because as you know, you have to pay taxes on income here in Connecticut. Most people who will have a TIN can open bank accounts. They could do contractual labor and make some money, and they could buy properties. I don't think, unless you're going to buy a house for cash, I don't think you'll be able to buy it with a TIN number because you're not going to be able to get a mortgage like that as an individual using a TIN. Plus, you'd have to cover some real ID problems to really get a mortgage. So I'm not sure what you mean by property, but to answer that plainly, whether or not you have a TIN, if you have property, it's yours. You could sell it, transfer, do whatever you want. It is yours. That TIN is only given so that you could probably really pay taxes. Yes. Pretty much. That's it. And it has nothing to do with immigration because IRS and CIS or ICE, they're just not the same entity and they do different jobs.
Thank you, Attorney Dorman. So motor vehicle infractions tend to be on the criminal side. When someone's charged with reckless driving and the court offers accelerated rehabilitation, should they take the deal or should they take the chance and go to trial being that they're out of status?
Take the AR. That's all I'm gonna say. Take the AR. I do a lot of criminal defense work, and accelerated rehabilitation is a diversionary program. You don't ever plead guilty. You don't ever say you did anything. You just go do what's required of you in the program. And as long as you do what you're supposed to do and you do not get arrested again or have any of the problems, it just gets dismissed, which means your record of arrest is erased. Your mugshot is deleted. It's as if you were never arrested, period. It's a good way to avoid deportation if you're accused of a crime. But it's only to be used for those people who will only do that one stupid thing that got them arrested and nothing else, because you can't use it twice. All right, so use the AR.
Thank you, Attorney. And this is our last question. Oh, excuse me.
Also, if your case is dismissed, you technically have a right, and I've done it in some cases, to get to the police department in writing and tell them you want back all information you gave them, and don't let them say they destroyed it. Say, no, I want it in my hand. I'll come down and pick it up. I want the picture. I want the prints. I want everything. And you can get them back from the local police departments. Unfortunately, they also send them to the FBI, and you're not going to get them back from the FBI. Although I've done that a couple of times, but normally no.
Thank you, Attorney Schulman. So we have 1 minute left. If my papers are in process and I get picked up by ICE, what are my rights?
A lot of people ask this question. I keep telling them, people who have a pending application with USCIS, the harmless immigration agency where people get green cards and work permits from, or people are in the process of a immigration court process, they have an asylum pending with the immigration court, we are still a nation of laws. And we still owe people their due process at USCIS or in court. While you have something pending, and provided that you are diligent about it and you don't drop it, you don't fail to file what you're supposed to. Provided that it's still naturally pending, you should have nothing to worry about, absent any arrests or convictions or other bad stuff that you might be doing in the meantime. So if that's the only thing that's happening, you have a pending case with USCIS or EOIR, Immigration Court, you should relax. Until a judge pronounces a decision, ICE should not be able to touch you in a pending case. So we should stop worrying.
Yeah, that's the time you say, I got my papers, and just wave. That's the stuff you walk around with to be like, ha, 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 I got stuff, go away. Because you would have had your receipt for filing and all these documents that they could put in their system, and it will bring up everything that's pending for you. And that basically will confirm that you're not someone that should be subject to detention.
Thank you. And this is concluding our program. I would love to give a special thank you to Attorney Busen, Attorney Dorman, Attorney Schulman.
Thank you. Awesome.
And we have an opportunity again to learn more information. I know there was questions that weren't addressed. We are going to come up with a strategic way to provide answers to these questions. We haven't created that vision yet. And we are now going to take a moment and Pastor Mitchell will bless the food.
Amen. That's what we do. Father, we thank you for this afternoon. We thank you for everything that was said and done. We now ask God for your blessings upon the food that we will partake of. Bless it now in Jesus' name. We say amen. Amen.
Amen.
Hey.